Hey everybody, welcome to Goshen Prepping. Thanks for being here. Very important topic today. And it's going to be different because, a lot of times we talk about, why to prep and how to stockpile food, etc. Today's going to talk about crap hitting the fan itself. Because I'm asked all the time, by the way, on the channel, two questions. Number one, how do you know it's time to start using the preps? Because we prepare, we stockpile, we have all these things ready. How do we know it's time? I mean, obviously you should always be using your preps, not necessarily using up your food, but using it, rotating it, using your equipment, getting used to it. But I know what you mean. How do we know it's actually crap's hitting the fan? And that's actually the second question. How do we know when all this is actually going to transpire and take place? And there's a simple answer, by the way, which I will definitely get to it in a few minutes in this video. But I want you to understand when it comes to crap hitting the fan, I don't know about you. I personally believe there's like orchestration of things happening. I don't think we have an accident that we're heading into World War III or the economy is going to collapse or you name it. And that's where the ambiguity comes into place because people are like, do we look for just an EMP? Do we look for, or is it going to be a coronal mass ejection? Are we going to be looking at natural disasters? Are we going to be looking at economic crash? Are we going to be looking at war? Are we going to be looking at nuclear war? So many things that could spur crap hitting the fan. And again, I believe there's like an orchestration to it. It's up to us to try to figure out how that orchestration works and what's going to happen and when it's going to happen. But when is crap actually going to hit the fan? And I want to be honest with you, the elites, when you talk about people running just not even our country, but the world, it's really simple. They like money and power. That's what they want. And if they make things go super crazy too fast, they're going to lose power. They're going to lose control. But they have agendas in mind in which they want to make sure that their plans are carried out. Plans I can't even say on YouTube because the last time I mentioned it, they flagged me with a warning and said, we're going to give you a strike and shut your channel down if you talk about this. But when we talk about, loosely put, how many people are on the planet, and of course that could be catastrophic with a lot of people on the planet, then of course the elites may take action to this and they will take action. All right, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, I'm not saying we're not going to get some kind of surprise false flag attack on America, some kind of black swan attack on America. It very well might happen. In fact, I'm going to say it probably will happen, but that's not going to be the one thing that we're going to see when crap hits the fan. That's all leading up to it. It is the metaphorical tale we all know as far as a frog. How do you boil a frog? You put him in the water, and when the water's nice and cold, turn it on, and slowly comes up to a boil. Next thing you know, you have frog soup. But if the water's already boiling, some kind of huge catastrophic thing, and you throw the frog in there, they know something's up, and they're going to jump out very quickly before they become frog soup. And that's what we see. I'm not going to say that we're not going to have some kind of major event happening in the United States. But that major event is going to be coincided in a way where they're going to try to get America to unify under this banner of, we need to go into war, for example. A Pearl Harbor event, if you will. That's what I see as coming. But that's not going to be what we're talking about as far as when crap hits the fan. And it really comes down to this, ready? I don't care which catastrophe, which disaster, which man-made thing we're talking about. They all will lead to one thing. And that one thing, by the way, also YouTube doesn't like me saying, is literally people uprising, people causing major problems as far as violence with one another. Because think about it this way. No matter what we see, if we believe that there's a lot of people on the planet and there's not enough food, wink, wink, to feed all these people, well, we have a big problem with that. And so to eliminate the amount of people, we as the government and elites don't need to eliminate the amount of people. We'll let the people do it for us. And that's what we see. I mean, how many times have we said over the past few years, the amount of division in the country is incredible. There's always been two sides of the aisle, which are really just one side of the aisle in many cases, aren't they? There are some good people in politics, just few and far between. But the two sides of the aisle are splitting even more so. Honestly, in reality, I think this one, let's see, is that your left-hand side? That's your right-hand side. This left one has come way over here. And there's very few left here because they've been strong-armed to following this far progressive stance. And the right, I believe the right are trying to do things, but either becoming lame ducks or they simply just are being too much pressure, whatever the case may be. But either way, we're seeing this major separation between people in America. It used to be a day where you could live in your house, go out and mow your lawn, and your person next door to you may have 100% opposite political beliefs. As they're out mowing your lawn, you both wave to each other. How's the wife? How's the kids? How's the job? And everything's just fine. That's disappearing, isn't it? I'm going to ask you real quick. Put in the comments below. How many of you have friends, or even more so, have family who do not see things politically eye to eye to you? And it's always been that way, but now it's like a major slugfest match. You can't even talk about it because they just fly off the handle. I'm hearing about this more and more. So when we see this huge division, the division isn't simply just to divide people and conquer, because guess what? The United States, we've got a lot of firearms. We have this thing called a Second Amendment, and there's a lot of people who take this very seriously. The whole point of the Second Amendment is to fight against tyranny. Sure, I like to use it for hunting, and sure, I like to use it to make sure my house is safe, but it's all about preventing tyranny. How are we supposed to overcome this country that is so well armed? It's really simple. Let's divide and conquer and have them fight each other. Let's go back just a few years. Pandemic setting in, and we're starting to see all kinds of peaceful protest kicking in. And it's not even just a matter of that. It's a matter of the violence and burning down buildings and looting just came out of, practically speaking, nowhere, didn't it? It didn't come out of nowhere, by the way. If you really dig deep, you can see that a lot of these people were paid to come out in these areas to cause these problems because there's a political agenda in mind. And I guess I'm going to ask you this. Do you really think that political agenda is gone? Not even close. Now we're even more divided. So when we see things crap hitting the fan, shortages in the store, sure, we have them. Inflation, yeah, it's happening. Labor shortages, the list goes on and on. It's like the Billy Joel song, "We Didn't Start the Fire," but talk about all the things happening right now. But that's not crap hitting the fan. What it's going to come down to is this, and here's what the elites want. They want us to fight against each other. They want us to go after each other. They want us to be violent. And so here's what you look for, and here's when you know the crap is hitting the fan. Instead of seeing it in sporadic areas here and there, a little bit happening in like Portland or a little bit in Minneapolis there. And no, we're going to see, literally, I talked about this yesterday, defund the police is obviously causing problems. Just for the fact that we don't have enough taxes to pay the police is causing problems. The police are overtaxed. They're walking off the job because it's too much now, especially as far as worrying about getting sued. So as the police force goes down for so many reasons, right at the time when there's labor shortages, there's inflation, there's shortages in groceries, people can't afford houses anymore, and now we're seeing an increase in desperation. Police force going down, desperation increasing, there's going to be a tipping point. And that is what we need to look for. I'm not saying it's a tipping point in just Portland or in New York or fill in the blank. But what we're going to see is an increase in violence happening in the country. Personally, I could easily see it happening this year, certainly by next year, where it's not going to be sporadic. You're not going to see just one little state or one city, as far as violence increasing here, and we're going to watch in the news and say, oh, look what's happening there. We're going to be looking out our windows and saying, look what's happening here. Because once it starts, once you start seeing the violence, once you start seeing these people looting again, and now, this time, their agenda's been met, there's not enough police to cover it, it's going to catch fire, both physically and metaphorically speaking, across the country and widespread. Every city is going to start seeing a massive increase in violence and looting, and the list goes on and on. That is what we need to watch for. Sure, an EMP, a coronal mass ejection, World War III, a worldwide, nationwide power shortage or, power outage, blackouts, all these things may cause that. But when you start seeing the tipping point going too far and the violence is now starting to go across everywhere, it's going to exacerbate and cause even more violence. And that's what we need to look for. That's the day crap's going to hit the fan. So I always say to everybody, and by the way, in videos past, I didn't talk about having guns. YouTube likes to flag me for this. They like to make it so I get shadow banned for this. Even saying the word shadow banned for YouTube will get you shadow banned. It's happening to everybody who talks about these things. But you know what? Push comes to shove. We have to talk about this. You need to arm yourself. You need to be ready. You need to have a multitude of firearms that you are proficient at. You need to drill and train and get ready, tactically speaking, to prepare for yourself and your family. Because again, we just talked about it yesterday. Some of the police departments are already saying, you know what, in these certain shifts, I only have like 20 officers on for the entire city. Talk about Pittsburgh, but that's just Pittsburgh. It is coming everywhere across the country. So Very important video to understand. Share this with your friends. Share this with your neighbors. Even if they don't politically see eye to eye with you, we all need to be prepared for this, because if we simply look at the trends, that's the direction we're heading, and it's just a matter of time before the tipping point goes over. Something to think about. We'll see you tomorrow.